From the swamps of Acadiana to the Mississippi Gulf Coast and everywhere in between. From the city where the spirits that haunt the streets at night outnumber those served in its bars and restaurants. Welcome to Paranormal Talk.
And good evening, everyone. Welcome to Paranormal Talk with the New Orleans Ghost Hunters. I am your co-host, David.
And it's me and Mark again.
And tonight we're going to have a very interesting show. You know, earlier Mark and I, we went to Wizard World where we actually gave a panel, and it turned out very, very well. More people than we thought showed up, and we were very interested in what we had to say. So, Darren, can you turn my headphones up just a little bit more? I don't know if I'm going out.
We are actually getting technical now because we're like
yes.
saying...
Oh, that's a lot better.
There we go.
With the headphones on, I could barely hear myself. I don't know if it was going out there. Anyway, and tonight, our traveling correspondent, Chris Kallstrom, is in Japan, and she's going to be joining us. Chris, are you there? Chris, are you there?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
We can hear you.
Good. You're coming in very clear tonight, better than the last few weeks.
Well, it's because you're in
I'm on a different computer.
Oh,
okay.
I thought it might be because you're in Japan, the land of technology or something like that.
Oh, maybe. I'm a little bit closer to you guys. I think that's it, too.
Oh, you okay?
What part of Japan are you in?
I am in Akita, and that is northern Japan, and it is freezing.
Oh, is it daytime over there?
It is 10 in the morning.
Oh, really?
A lot better than 2 in the morning where you were in Italy.
Yes, so much better.
So what is that? what is that you're eating? Is that a sushi roll you're eating?
I'm not eating anything.
Oh,
I'm
okay.
drinking coffee.
Oh, okay, that's what that is. So it was a sushi
But
roll.
I have been eating sushi every day since I got to Japan.
So, what interesting stories do you have for us this week?
Well, what I wanted to tell you about this week was actually an event that I went to last week, and that was in Kyoto, Japan, and they were celebrating Setsubun, which is their Chinese New Year.
Well, tell us about the Chinese New Year or Japanese New Year?
Well, it's from the old Chinese calendar, so we still call it the Chinese New Year.
Okay.
But there were that with each new change of the seasons, just like we believe with Halloweens or the Celts used to, that was a time when spirits could actually come through in the land of the living.
Mm-hmm.
And so they thought that with this change of seasons, which was the beginning of their spring, that spirits could come through. And so they have the tradition of throwing beans to ensure that bad spirits will stay away. And for them, spirits actually represent illness, natural disaster, disease, things like that. So it's a way to make sure that the coming year is has good luck and good fortune in keeping all the bad things away. And how they celebrate that is that these spirits, which they call Oni, O-N-I, take place in these performances. And it dates back to an old belief that there was one Oni who disguised himself as a beautiful woman with a beautiful kimono and had a magic mallet, and actually visited a woman, and with his magic mallet conjured up all these beautiful kimonos which he gave to her, but the woman got greedy and wanted to steal the mallet and the kimono from this devil. And so she drugged him and got him really drunk with sake, and when he was unconscious, she took his kimono off and stole the mallet. But when she took the kimono off, saw that it was a devil, and when the devil tried to get her, she threw beans at him, and that was enough to banish him. And so that's how the tradition started of throwing beans each year to keep these demons away.
That brings up two very good points. I wanted to make sure you said beans and not beads, because I was like, why are they throwing beans at somebody?
Yeah, it's like Mardi Gras.
Is that the first situation? Is that the first situation where a girl actually tried to get a guy drunk and take his kimono off?
It's the first one that I'm aware of.
It's usually like, the reverse situation. But, yeah, I'm going to get him drunk and take his kimono off. I kind of like that. Kind of adds a new twist to it.
Well, I do have a question. You've been traveling a lot. You've been collecting a lot of stories. Do you think you're going to have more information than you can possibly use in one book?
No. I think that the information will be used in different ways. Like some will be describing events, some will be telling travel stories of experiences I've been through, but it'll all be worked in there quite nicely.
So let me ask you this also. We've been doing a lot of investigations, a lot of research. How interested are you in doing a book on some of the research that we're collecting?
That would be wonderful. Have you been thinking about that?
Yeah, thank God, because I can't write.
Yes, yes, we have. Because as you know, one of our purposes is not only to perform a service to the community. Also, we're trying to get as much information as we can on New Orleans locations to try to prove if the stories you hear, if they're true or not. And we're collecting a lot of information on that. And we like to kind of put some of the information out there that's never really been done before. It's like verifying a lot of the paranormal activity. And we need somebody to kind of document this. And I think you kind of fit the bill.
Thank you, and I think that's a great idea for the book. I think a lot of people will learn a lot about what paranormal investigations really consist of.
Well, Mark, I think last show he kind of mentioned there's a famous story of a sultan who lived in a French quarter and supposedly was a massacre at his house in, was it like 1800s, 1870s?
Well, they say it occurred in 1870, but there's records of it going all the way back to the early 1700s.
Yeah, but the stories go back to 1700s. So that's a story right there. I mean, that's really misleading people. So we like to kind of, find the truth behind the stuff and put it into book form and try to update a lot of these stories out there.
That's a great idea.
Hey, I got a question for you going over to Japan right now. And maybe you can describe, if there is a difference, I believe there is. What is the difference between an Oni and a Kami?
What is a kami?
Like kamikaze was the divine winds. A kami is a spirit. You are in Japan, right?
Yeah, well, Oni is a bad spirit.
Well, no, that's what I'm asking. Could you find that out for me? Like, I know, like, the kamikaze was the divine winds, and it goes back to when I believe it was Genghis Khan tried to invade Japan, and then the tsunami came and destroyed his fleet. Carried over again into World War II, where the pilots became the kamikaze, which just meant divine wind. So I know it has something to do with the spirit, but I wasn't sure the difference between a kami and a oni.
Oni. Well, an oni is the devil that, brings illness and bad fortune and things like that. So I would say he's a specific type of devil.
Okay, so it's more of an evil spirit. Oni would be more of an evil spirit, where
yes.
a kami would be more of a divine helping spirit.
I guess so.
Well, look up that. That's
your
project for next week.
Next week I'll have it all for you.
What's it like over there besides freezing? Do you have any old castles over there? Or
castles in Japan?
Yeah, they had some old castles. Yeah, they're actually quite different than European castles.
Okay.
Do they have any?
They do. I haven't been to the
well, there you go. Proves me wrong.
The shrines and temples are beautiful, though.
But, I mean, they are a lot. I mean, you just came from Europe. But you can tell that the castles in Japan are much different design than the European castles.
I can't say that because I haven't been to any of the castles here.
When you check it out.
I can imagine they would be. I'll get on that for you, too.
Yeah, well, they didn't really have the moats. Like the roadways up to them were all on angles to increase the time the archers could shoot arrows at them and all that. I need to be over there in Japan just partying with you.
You should. You should come over.
How close are you to the Vatican?
So far.
And what is the weirdest thing you have eaten over there?
The weirdest thing I've eaten would probably be octopus.
Is
I've had
it live?
it before, but just haven't. No.
Okay.
I have tasted octopus at a sushi restaurant, and I did not like it. It was one of the worst things I've ever eaten.
Yeah, and I think just knowing what it is doesn't help,
Well, I didn't need to know what it was. As soon as I bit into it, I knew I didn't like it.
Yeah.
It was bad.
And they got the uni, the sea urchin. I can't eat that.
I haven't tried that.
You don't need to try it.
Okay.
How is the sauerkraut?
The sauerkraut? I don't know if they have that over here.
And the sake?
Unfortunately, I don't drink alcohol.
You got to try
I
the
haven't
sake.
had the sake. I know the look of disappointment on your face.
I love
The
sake.
tea's very
It's
good.
one of my weaknesses. Chris, thank you so much again for joining in this week.
Thank
Your
you.
assignment for next week is to give us a report on the Kami and the Oni.
Okay, I will. Thank you for that homework assignment.
All right, I tell you, when we come back, we are going to talk about a very, very interesting topic, exorcism. And as usual, Mark is very well informed on this. He come into the studio with a small book, and he's going to be talking about the original exorcism that the movie was based on.
It's going to be a good show. Give us a call at 504-556-9696.
And we'd like to thank our sponsors, Blue Bonnet Dental Care, and also Star Spray Foam. So we'll catch you on the other side of the break. And welcome back to Paranormal Talk with the New Orleans Ghost Hunters. You know, before we start our segment on exorcism, you know, this afternoon, Comic-Con is here in New Orleans.
Wizard World.
Well,
Wizard World.
yeah, Comic-Con Wizard World. You know, we did a panel earlier on the haunted history of New Orleans. You know, and Mark is very, very knowledgeable at the history of New Orleans, and I know some stuff about it. So he actually gave a great talk at the panel. In fact, I was even impressed. I sat there and listened to it. I was learning stuff, and I know the people there was really, really impressed with it, because every now and then I glanced out to the audience, and they were like captivated on every word you were saying. And even after it was over, they came up to us and was saying, "Oh, thank you for the information," because they asked all kind of stuff about ghost hunting. So it turned into a really, really good panel, and there was a lot of people there. So if anybody out there in the panel is listening in tonight, we want to thank you for coming to the panel today, and we appreciate you being there and hopefully being our new fans. But
thank you, David, for that. That means a lot. But you know, there's also something else going on that's very important at Wizard World that I'd like you to talk about.
Oh, before
I'd like you to talk about Blaster Trooper.
As people know, you know, I'm a member of the 501st, which is a worldwide costuming organization for Star Wars. And I am, of course, a biker scout. And if you don't know what that is, look at the last movie. I was the guy who was on a speeder bike zooming between the trees, and we got beat up by the little teddy bears known as Ewoks. But anyway, we are going to be set up at Wizard World. So if you're going to be there this weekend, you can stop in and donate and actually get to shoot a Nerf gun at some Star Wars characters. And the money is going to be going towards a little boy named Dylan to help equip a new van his parents are trying to buy. He was born with some physical difficulties. And we do stuff like this to raise money. Every year we pick a child, and we do this to help raise money and donate it to them to help them pay medical bills and stuff. So it's the whole purpose behind what we're doing is to help out the community and give back. And it's a really good thing that we do. So if you're at Wizard World, be sure to stop in and tell me hello and shoot a Nerf gun at me, and we'll help raise money for a physically handicapped little boy.
I mean, you really can't ask for anything more than that. I mean, where else are you going to get a chance to blast a stormtrooper and then contribute to somebody's quality of life?
Oh yeah, biker
You
scout.
know?
We're going to have TIE pilots, stormtroopers. Of course, I'm going to be a biker scout. We even have some clone troopers out there. We're even going to have Anakin, the Jedi, so you can go shoot at him. And
Vader's going to be there.
And Vader's going to be there. Something interesting is that we were shooting a promo for News with a Twist the other day, and they were kind of like shooting a Nerf gun at us in the filming. And the guy who was doing Anakin was actually blocking the little Nerf darts with his lightsaber. So,
Ooh, just like a real Jedi.
So that was pretty cool. But anyway, so tonight we're going to talk about exorcism, and you're going to talk about the actual case that the movie was based on.
Yeah, we're gonna delve into the actual history of the story that created the whole Exorcist movie phenomenon.
Well,
and it really is a phenomenon.
Well, a lot of people don't know that it was actually based on the book, and I've read the book, and the book is different than the movie. It happened in the book. It happened to a little girl, and her mother was actually a actress. And so a lot of events were different, and it changed between the book and the movie. And it seems like the actual story in the book tends to be a little bit different also.
It tends to be a little bit different. There are similarities on it, but before we get into that, again, if you have any questions on us, give us a call at 504-556-9696. We also have some new technology that we're trying out. So if you have a question, you can fax us to us at 504-299-8735.
We have a fax machine now?
We have a fax machine now.
Where's the fax machine at?
No. So you can fax me your question now, and we'll send Daryl out to get it.
So,
right.
So how do we know when we get a fax? Is Daryl going to run out like every 2 or 3 minutes and check it? Wait, what is that? Daryl, go check the fax machine. I think we have fax coming in.
Anyway, all right. That was our plug for our fax machine. The Exorcist story, like David said, it's very popular. It came out in the 1970s. This is the movie I'm talking about. It came out in the 1970s, and it really changed horror movies in a lot of ways. I mean, you had grown men that would go into that movie theater and then say that was one of the only movies they ever seen that bothered them. Well, what people don't know is it was based off of a diary and some newspaper articles that occurred. Now, let's look at some of the similarities. And this is really neat. Right out in the open, I've seen the boy that it happened to. I know his name. His first name is Ronald. I'm not going to say his last name, but instead of just saying the boy the whole time, I'll just go by his first name.
Do they have pictures of him on the internet?
Yeah, you can actually. It's not that hard to find out. I mean, if you do a little bit of digging, you can find out who it is. You can see his picture. But I've done a lot of research into it, and he tries to keep it quiet. I believe he's passed on. So I'm gonna just not say his last name. But for many years, it believed that the event occurred in Washington, D.C., at an address on Bunker Hill in Mount Rainier. Well, that's not where it happened at. The actual event occurred in Cape Cottage, Maryland, which is right by Washington, D.C., which is in Mount Rainier. But for years they tried to figure out, for years they were so busy looking at Mount Rainier they could never figure out where it happened at. Until, I can't think of the guy's name, but he done some tremendous research and was actually able to get in touch with the boy, get in touch with some friends. If you've been paying attention to the news, you'll see over the last few weeks the story of this possession in Gary, Indiana.
Oh boy, don't go there.
Well, I'm not gonna go there, but the real event kind of hit the news like that.
Well, you know, we read about this one that just happened in Illinois, and we had a lot of questions, a lot of things didn't make sense, and that's what kind of led us to doing this show tonight on exorcism. And the case in Indiana, there's just a lot of stuff that has us really skeptical.
But the reason I'm saying that is it first becomes popular back in the 1950s from newspaper articles. First article ever published about it was published on August the 10th, 1949 in the Washington Post. And the title of that was Pastor Tells Eerie Tale of a Haunted Boy. And it goes on to talk about a boy that's in a haunted house. The beds are shaking violently. Objects are flying around the house. Things are jumping all around and landing at the boy's feet. Now, this is after the actual exorcism has already been completed. February 17th. No. That was one of the events. August 10th, 1949. Another one published in the Evening Post. Minister tells parapsychologist noisy ghost-plagued family. And that goes on to say that the boy went through all these rituals he went through a Episcopal, a Lutheran, and a Roman Catholic ritual. Some other articles about it. August 11th, 1949, Times Herald. Haunted boy's parents tell of a ghost message. August 19th, 1949, the Evening Star. Priest freed boy of possession by devil, church sources say. August 20th, 1949, the Evening Star. New tales of boy's exorcism and Catholic ritual disclosed. August 20th, 1949, Washington Post. Priest frees boy held in devil's grip. And then up until August 1949, it's actually published in a parapsychology bulletin. And that's number 14, August 1949. And that's called Report of a Poltergeist. So you can see it's going through all these newspaper articles. And it's even making scientific documents when it goes into that journal. And they all kind of expand on, they start off kind of vague, but then over time it just goes more and more and more and more. Kind of like the story here that you're seeing in Gariana, where it starts off a little and then everybody adds a little bit onto it.
Well, you know, I did read some of your notes about people who kind of debunked it.
Right.
And it was a lot of hyperbole and exaggeration on what actually happened.
Well, and then the event that we're going to go off of is not the event, but the event that has the most written about it occurred in 1975. It was an article written by Steve Erdman, and it was called The Truth Behind the Exorcist. And when we come back after the break, because we're up against a minute, we're going to go into that. But I just wanted to give you a little bit of the background. When we come up, we're going to start talking about what actually occurred before it, how it's related to the movie, and then what actually occurred during the actual exorcisms.
So if you want to join us here on the radio show, you can give us a call at 556-9696. And for those of you watching us on YouTube, remember we come on 7 to 8 o'clock p.m. Central Time. So we ask that you call in at those times so you don't be calling another radio show. Appreciate that.
If you can call them up and ask them paranormal questions. That would probably throw them all off.
Or you can even fax us your questions. Darryl, when's the last time you checked the fax machine?
He's going right now. Give us a fax at 299-8735.
You bet. We might have like 30, 40 faxes sitting out there.
And we'll see you after the bottom of the hour.
Welcome back to Paranormal Talk with the New Orleans Ghost Hunters. You know, during the break, Darren had to run out and check the fax machine, and we actually had so many questions come in, he had to get a new ream of paper and fill the fax machine. And we want to apologize that we really can't get to all the questions, so, I mean, I'm just, like, just one question we have here. Do you guys have the recipe for raspberry muffins?
Raspberry and some
Muffins.
Jiffy Mix. Yes, that's raspberry muffins. But thank you, and thanks for thinking so highly of us.
That's not paranormal.
If you ever ate my raspberry muffins, that would be paranormal. All right, back to The Exorcist, and here we go. First event is going to, well, a little bit about the family and the way the friends describe Ronald's life. He's the best that people in the neighborhood could, some people in the neighborhood could describe it as he comes from an extremely dysfunctional family. Father never really gets involved that much. I mean, the father's always there, but he never gets involved into the whole possession thing. His grandmother, who they believe is a big catalyst of it, barely speaks English. She's from Germany, and the family is real strict German Lutherans. And the grandmother believes in supernatural, and everything that occurs is supernatural. So even from a young age, this boy's got stuff like that coming at him. He's described as a loner. But the first event is going to start occurring on January the 15th, 1949. And what they're saying is they hear the sounds of dripping coming from the grandmother's bedroom, like a dripping faucet. And then a picture of Jesus is on the wall, and that begins to shake. And then they can hear scratchings coming up on the floorboard from underneath the house. This occurs 10 days straight from 7 p.m. to midnight, and they can't explain it. Then it stops for 3 days, and there's nothing. Then after those 3 days of rest, for the next 6 nights, the boy can hear sounds like squeaking shoes walking on his bed. But they can't explain what's going on. Now, on January 26th, 11 days after that, his Aunt Tilly dies at the age of 54 from multiple sclerosis. And they believe that what's been occurring up until that point is kind of a message that somebody in the family is getting ready to die. Kind of like me and David have experienced several times in our family.
Yeah, it sounds like knocking.
His Aunt Tilly had actually taught him to play with a Ouija board. And him and his aunt used to play on the Ouija board together. So, you know, when people talk about Ouija board, hey, we're talking back into 49. They're talking about the Ouija board is tied into this stuff. So the mother gets the idea, and the grandmother gets the idea during one of these events where things are going. She says, Aunt Tilly, if that's you, can you knock 3 times? And then they feel brushes of waves of air hit them and 3 knocks on the floor. The mother then asks, hey, Tilly, if that's really you, can you knock 4 times? And then 4 knocks are heard and what sounds like claws scratching on Ronald's mattress. So that's all going on. Then we're going to jump over to February 17th, 1949. The family has talked to Reverend Schultz about this and says everything that's going on with the boy, crazy things that happen around the boy. Can you watch him? And he says, sure, bring the boy over to my house. I'll watch him for the night, see if anything occurs. Well, when the lights go out, the Reverend says he hears scratching noises. He witnesses the bed that the boy is on shaking. Ronald is sitting in a chair, and that flips over. And then when Ronald is sitting on a pallet of blankets, that starts to move around the floor. Now, he never really says that he thinks it's paranormal. At one time, he even tells Ronald, stop it. You know, this is enough, stop it. February 26, 1949, is when physical contact really starts to be made, if you're going to believe everything that occurred in the case. Scratchings and markings begin to appear on Ronald's body for 4 straight nights. And at first they appear, the mother describes them as claw marks. And it only occurs when the mother's around. And the mother contacts as a Father Albert Hughes of St. James Church in Mount Rainier. He tells them to use holy water and bless candles and special prayers, but he never goes to the house. Father Hughes never went to the house. The mother would always bring Ronald to the rectory where the priest was for things. So he tells her, you know, to use the holy water to bless candles. And the mother claims that when they're using the blessed candles, that a comb actually flies across the room and puts the candles out. She says fruit starts to fly around the room. The kitchen table is being turned over. Milk and food are being moved off of tables. Coat hangers fly across the room. Out of nowhere, a Bible falls at Ronald's feet.
But you know what? To me, this sounds more like a poltergeist than actually a demon possession, because that's all associated with poltergeist activity, which is associated with adolescence, and he's going through adolescence, correct?
Right. That's exactly right.
And for those who may not know, poltergeist is a German word meaning noisy ghost, and that's basically what they do, if they actually even exist.
Now, there is an incident that occurs when Ronald's in school that his desk, they say it moves across the floor. Witnesses that were in the class with him, which was one of his friends that I read an article on, says the desk was shaking really fast. The teacher told him to stop it. He says, I'm not doing it. They take him out of class. They never see him in school again. But the boy would never say if he thought Ronald was actually, what you get the idea is he thinks maybe Ronald was shaking the desk. Well, after that, Ronald is taken from the home, not taken from the home, but he goes to Georgetown University, and he undergoes psychological and medical experiments, but evaluations while he's there to make sure everything is all right. During this time, Father E. Albert Hughes comes to him in the hospital, and this is the first time that they actually tried to do an exorcism on him. During this event, it's alleged, and the father never said anyways, but Ronald pulls a spring from the mattress and stabs him in the arm with it. So he actually broke a spring off and then stabs him on him. And after that, no success in the exorcisms. The boy's still doing all these kind of crazy things. Things are flying around with him. The family decides, we need a break. We need to get him out of here. So they send him to Normandy, Missouri, where he has an aunt living. And that's where the rest of the family actually starts to see writing appearing on his body. On March the 9th, 1949, Father Raymond J. Bishop of St. Louis University was called in. And he witnesses scratching on the skin and the shaking of the mattresses. The big guy that gets involved is actually Father Bowdern, and he's the pastor of St. Francis Xavier Church. He comes in on March the 11th. And when Ronald goes to bed that night, Father Bowdern reads a novena prayer over him. He's got some pieces of the forearm of St. Francis Xavier. He uses those to bless Ronald. He attaches a jewel-encrusted crucifix under Ronald's pillow, and then he leaves. Well, shortly after the priest leaves, the family hears this big commotion in the room. They rush in. They see that a large bookcase has been moved about the room. A bench is turned over. The crucifix has been moved to the edge of the bed, and Ronald's mattress is shaken uncontrollably. And it only stops after the family starts yelling, Aunt Tilly, stop it. So up until this point, the family is not thinking demon possession. They're thinking this is all related to the death of his aunt that's causing
But
this.
did this activity stop when they yelled out the aunt's name and asked her to stop?
Yes,
The activity did stop.
activity stops, according to them. Now, on March the 16th, 1949, Archbishop Joseph E. Ritter gives Father Bowdern the permission to start the rite of exorcism. Because, he went through a Lutheran, he went through Episcopal, and I was telling David, the Catholic rite of exorcism has to be approved by a higher up, because the Catholics don't do it that much. But with some of these other denominations, it's up to the priest. You got to get permission to start the actual Catholic rite of exorcism. So Father Bowdern goes to the residence where he's staying, and it's Father Bowdern, Father Bishops, and Walter Halloran, who is a Jesuit scholar working on his masters, who will eventually become a priest. And they begin the exorcism ritual, and Father Bowdern leads it. Now, it's not just a one-time event. Throughout the entire month of March and April, Ronald is moved back and forth between his aunt in Normandy, a nearby rectory where they do it, and the Alexian Brothers Hospital in St. Louis. So they're moving him around. These priests are following him around. The priests are going, hey, let's go to this hospital, blah, blah, blah. Let's go here. Let's try this. And none of it's working. He goes through the rite of exorcism numerous times. And during these exorcisms, they say there's outbursts of excessive cursing, vomiting. urination. He starts using Latin phrases that he can't possibly know, and that really neat. But during the point of this, he changes his religion from Lutheran to Catholicism, and he actually becomes confirmed during this time. And we'll talk about that because we're getting towards the end of what happened in a few short days. But hey, we'll be back after the break. Give us a call at 504-556-9696. Also, if you've seen the Rougarou, the Grinch, or the Honey Island Swamp Monster, please give us a call because we're looking for people who have actual sightings. And hey, this is a great story. It gets close. We're near the end, and we're going to talk about what some of his friends said when it's all over with. See you when we get back.
And welcome back to Paranormal Talk with the New Orleans Ghost Hunters. You know, in doing the station break, we got a phone call, and a caller said no, he has never seen the Rougarou, but he has seen the Tooth Fairy, so.
Well, that is a possibility. So we were talking about Ronald's confirmation as a Catholic. Now, what occurs after this might be one of the hardest aspects of the case to explain, but shortly after he becomes a Catholic, a 6-inch image of the devil with his hands above his head, webs coming from his hands, and horns appears on Ronald's calf. That's hard to explain.
Yes.
Now, during this trip, during this time, the boy is also, sometimes he'll attack the priest. He has to be held down. He's throwing fits, tantrums. They decide, he's going through a month long of exorcisms. It's pretty rough. They decide, let's get him back to Maryland. Just put him on a train, take him there. They put him on a train, and Father Baldern is with him. And they're on their way to Missouri. They're on their way from Missouri to Maryland, and he goes maniacal on. The thing is that he goes maniacal on the train, and he kicks Father Baldern in the groin, and he starts screaming at him, "That's a real nutcracker for you, isn't it?" And people, they're trying to hold him down. They can't control him.
But is that demonic? Does that indicate, something demonic? I don't think it
I
does.
don't think it denotes anything demonic. I think, I've had to fight people that were like that, and there was nothing demon in there. That was a lot of psychological issues. But the final exorcism occurs on April the 18th, 1949. And during this one, Father Baldern forces him to wear a chain of medals and hold a crucifix in his hands. Ronald's throwing a fit, and then he eventually calms down, and he starts asking questions about the meaning of certain Latin prayers. And the priest is talking to him about the prayer. Then he begins the ritual again, and he demands to know, in the name of Jesus, the name and how long he intends to stay in that boy. And then Ronald starts to throw a tantrum and tells Baldern that he is actually one of the fallen angels. And then at about 11 o'clock that night, Ronald tells him in a new masculine voice that they had not heard yet. This is his actual quote. "Satan, Satan, I am Saint Michael. I command you, Satan, and the other evil spirits to leave this body. In the name of Dominus, immediately. Now, now, now." And then Ronald suffers one last spasm. He falls quiet, and he looks at Father Baldern and says, "He is gone." And he later tells Father Baldern that during that, he saw a vision of St. Michael holding a flaming sword over him. And then on April 30th, he leaves Missouri and goes back to Maryland, where he goes on to finish school. Actually becomes a very upstanding citizen and very educated man. Works for a very reputable aerospace program. And that doesn't give away too many hints. And becomes, by all extent and purposes, a normal member of society after that.
Let's address some of the things the priest and his friends said. It kind of, you have to question if these events actually happened like they said they did. Like, in other words, in the movie, the way it was portrayed that, I don't want to say he or she, but that the person threw up and, could actually direct it. What actually happened, one of the witnesses said?
Well, they talked to the older brother of Ronald's best friend, who would only be identified as JC. And he said that growing up, the two of the boys were inseparable. Yes, I knew him. There were very few people that knew about it at the time. He and my younger brother were very close friends, and they were very precocious, if you know what I'm saying. He goes on to say that every neighborhood has a pair of kids like that. They're always up to mischief, and there was a very close relationship. He said, if you ever asked, did you know anything about the possessions? And he says, you can say, I was in the house and witnessed these things. They asked him about the spitting that Ronald was always doing. And he said, well, with this pair, I noticed that one of the common bonds between them, they found this very clever way of doing it. They could spit with great accuracy up to 10 feet. It was a common thing. They keep their mouth closed and raise their lips and spit through their teeth. And then somehow developed a way to do that. I saw them do it all the time. Another thing was with the bed moving about. In those days, the bed had wire springs and were on wheels, and it was not too hard to make all the bed bounce and move about. It was harder to keep the bed in one place because of the way the beds were made. A lot of these things have been exaggerated to make a story, and that is exactly what is happening.
And I believe I read a comment from the priest when he asked him if he can remember the bed moving. And he said, "Well, I remember one time it moved when I leaned against it."
Yeah, he said, let me see. They asked him, was there ever any change in the boy's voice? And he said, not really. Now, this is Father Halloran, who was the Jesuit that was doing the research on it. And then they asked him, did it appear he understood the Latin he was speaking? And he says, I think he mimicked us.
Right. I remember reading that. He was mimicking them.
And then another one, did the boy speak in any languages other than English? And he says, just Latin. One of the things is they asked him, when the boy struck you, did he have extraordinary strength? And he says, well, I don't know. I never thought about it very much. It wasn't like getting punched by Mike Tyson. So you can kind of tell the idea of the time they talked to him. And then some of the things he witnessed that he could not explain, he paused and he said, I saw a bottle slide from a dresser across the room. There was no one near it. The bed moving. And then he says, the bed was on rollers, but I was leaning on it when it moved one time. So I think he's saying that he was leaning on it, the boy wasn't moving, but it moved him. And then they asked him, what were some of the things? And he says, well, spitting was frequent. It wasn't significant. There wasn't any vomiting or urinating that I recall. But he even mentions the spitting. Now, they talked to BC, who is his good friend. And let me see if I can bring up some of what he says here in my notes. Let me see. DC describes his life as dysfunctional. He says, we were playmates and classmates. We were playing together from the time I was 3 years old, and we went all the way through school together. People ask what he was like back then, and I can tell you that he was never what you would call a normal child. He was an only child and kind of spoiled, and he was a mean, he uses a B word, that refers to a male dog. We were together all the time, and we used to fight all the time. Then he talks about, like I said, watching the thing shaking there. He said that the boy had a dog that he would call people up and say, hey, come over to the house. And then he would hide in the basement, and then when the people would come into the house, he would let the dog out the back, and then the dog would go attack him. Ronald evidently got great deals of joy out of this, watching animals attack people. He goes in there to say that he was mean towards animals. He was Ronald's friend, but he doesn't really paint him as a very nice character.
And so you have to wonder how much of this is really a demonic possession and how much the kid was putting on is just acting out that was just interpreted as being, demonic.
Well, I have my doubts about it. Now, I've watched the Exorcist movie, and it is a great movie. But the movie is based off of this story. There is an article called, The Haunted Child. I think you can find it on the internet. This guy has done great research. Goes into much more depth than I was able to go into tonight.
He actually interviewed the real people.
And that's who I'm getting most of my information from, as well as other things I've looked up to verify what he said. But he was the one that done most of it, done some great work. Great story. I'll throw this in here real quick. I talked to a priest this week because I talked to the priest to get his view on it. And he had done some mission work overseas, and he says, over in Africa right now, every village has somebody that's possessed. Over here, not so much. He said, over here, Satan doesn't need to make his presence known as much. All you have to do is turn on the TV.
True, very true.
I was like, you're right. You know, maybe that's why we don't have so many possessions here. The hour is gone already. I hope you enjoyed tonight's show. And I had a lot of fun bringing it to you. We're going to be at Wizard World tomorrow. Hopefully seeing some people. David, you got 20 seconds. Go for it.
Well, we're just going to be at Wizard World, come out and shoot a trooper. I should say blast a trooper, to be politically correct, blast a trooper. And Mark is going to Mark has his press passes. He's actually going to be rubbing elbows with some of the stars from The Walking Dead. So,
until next week, bonne chance avec les fantômes.